Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the second part of this video where we're creating a 3D printed fabric using these interconnecting modules. In our previous video we reverse engineered an existing model downloaded from the internet, used the mesh design to create slices through that so we could see the internal structure, and then recreated that in the part design. In this video we're going to be creating a fabric with that, so an array of each of those modules. We're going to show you two methods of doing that. One is using the draft array and the other is the Lattice 2 workbench. We'll be creating a model like this and exporting that as an STL file so we can 3D print it. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look how we can create this array. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/Darren B. Stone, or at Coffee via ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. So at the stage now that we want to create an array for this and 3D print it. Now there are a number of ways to create the array for this object. We can use the draft workbench, we can use the lattice workbench, we can even use something like A2+ or assembly 4. I'm going to start with the draft workbench and create a simple array with this object. First of all, I'm going to simplify this to make it easier on us to see what's actually going on. So this object is basically a hexagon. So we're going to take the bottom of this and array it out. For that, I'm going to start a new document. And we're going to come over to the part design and we're going to create a shape binder. So I'm going to come into my NASA fabric, and let's make sure it's on screen so we can see it by clicking on the tab, and I'm going to select this face. Now it's important the way we actually select these. So I selected this face, we select the tab, and we create the shape binder. So I haven't selected anything, I haven't clicked anywhere else. Create the shape binder, and it will say the owner document isn't saved. So let's save that first. So I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to call this fabric array. Let's go through the process again, come back. This one, if we double click, it selects the whole object. So make sure I only select the face, come to the tab and use the subshape binder. We now got this subshape binder that we can work with. The reason why I've done this is just to make our life a little bit more simple, because if we had an array of this, then when we're creating like boundaries for our design or our printing area, then we're going to have, think like 20 or 30 of these connected together. It's going to be quite hard to see what we're doing. We'll swap those out for the actual object at the end of the process. So we've got our shape binder. Let's go to view and toggle axis cross so we know that's in the middle as well. Just get our bearings. I'm going to come over to the draft workbench, and from there we're going to be using the array tools under the modifications and array tools. They are available from the toolbar, and we'll see those here. They're in a sub drop down with all the array tools here. I'm just going to hide the gridding because we don't want that. And I'm going to click on the binder, come up to modifications, array tools, and array. So we're just going to get an idea of how to use this. So the array tools allows us to create an array. We've got the X and Y intervals and the number of elements. So we can work out with basic maths of where we want to place these, but it gets a bit more complicated when we want to add, say, a bit of a margin in here or a bit of a padding to allow these to be arrayed with space, which we need to do with our current model. So I'm going to take the defaults, maybe reduce this down to something like 60, and the same for the Y interval. So the X interval will go along the X, the red, and the Y interval along the Y, and just hit OK. So we have an array, a very simple array of 4 elements. Now I need to place these basically by the side of each other. If we remember back to our model, these were linked. They were by the side of each other and linked. Now we can do that by coming in and changing the X amount to have more. So if I added 3 in here, we can see if I zoom out, we've got 3 going along here. I'm going to keep them to 2, and we're going to change the actual interval X. So we've got interval X, and you can see we've got 16 here. We're looking along the X axis. So if I pull this in and hit the refresh, say Control R on Ubuntu or whatever the refresh is on your OS, then we can move those. But we're going to need to move those into place and move them along the wire to get them in the right position. There is an easier way. What I want to do is be able to transform one of these. You can use a little trick. If we come up to the array and find the expand array, this one here, at the moment it's set to false. If we open up the array, we have the binder within. So let's come to the expand array and set it to true and see what happens. Each of the array elements is expanded out into the separate entities. This means I can find, say, this one, and you can see it highlighted on the left, and right click, transform. And we can get an idea of the position of where this is supposed to be by just moving it into position, zooming in. And I'm going to move this along the X and also along the Y to get it in the right position. So I think I want it about here. So you can see this is a lot quicker to get a rough idea of where it should be. If I hit OK, what I can then do with that array element, I can come down and look at the placement and read off the placement. So my position along the X interval, this one was on the X interval along here, is X 6.4 and Y 10.8. So 6.4 and 10.8. Come back to the array, look at the interval, come down to the interval X, and type in here 6.4 and 10.8 along the X and Y. Now if we come up to that array and come back and look down to the expand array and set that to false and click off, that's updated and they're now in the right position. We just have to deal with the Y. So that's a quick way of getting that into position. Let's have a look at the array. Let's deal with the Y axis. We can do the same if we wanted. We can expand it out, but I'm just going to come into the Y and have a look, see what we've got here. So it's the Y axis, and I can bring this down. I'm using the refresh, edit, refresh, which is Control and R on my keyboard, and I can bring this down into position. Again, I have to change the X to get it in the right position. So let's bring this down, and well, I've had enough, so I'm going to go up and look at the expand array, set that to true, and look at this one. And what we'll do is right click, transform, and this will give me the Y interval now. So I'm looking to bring this down to about here. We could just read off the previous position and calculate from that. But if we're more of a visual kind of person, we can use that there. So now I've got a placement of -6.3, 10.8. So -6.3 and 10.8. So that's come back to the array, and the Y interval, you can see we've got 6.4, 10.8. So this one is going to be -6.4. I know it's 6.3, let's go for 6.4 and 10.8. Let's come up to the array now and click on the expand array, if I can find it, which I always lose. There it is, and set that to false and click off. Now we've got our array. So we've got our array, but we need to print this in some kind of shape. To do that, I'm going to come over to the sketcher and use a simple sketch in here along the XY plane and use something like a rectangle for the shape. So let's say I wanted to print it in a square with a length of 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. Let's make both those sides equal. Hit close. This can be any shape you want. The good thing about using a shape binder is that it's transparent, and we can see that through there. Another way to do it is take that sketch, come into the placement, use the position and set some Z-axis to bring this up above that array. This means that this is always on top and we can understand where our boundaries are for our array. Let's now take that array and increase it out along the X and Y interval. Now you'll see something, when we start doing this, it'll go into a diamond pattern. So that's a bit of a problem there in that we're going to have excess of this. There are other ways of arraying. We could say create an array and then create another array going across. But the good thing about this array is that we can transform this and get this into a shape that we want. Let's say let's come in and place this along here so you can see that there, and increase this out to say 15 by 15. And we'll right click transform, and it's a case of getting it into position and then removing the rest like so. But we want to remove whole hexagons, so we got all these hexagons in here. We say we don't want this one, we don't want this one, we don't want half ones in here. So we can get the array sitting on here, or we can transform the sketch. Let's come into the sketch, come into the placement and the position, and transform that along the X and the Y, and just get it into position. Let's say something like that. So I can see straight away that I'm going to be missing out all of these and all of these going along here because they're not full hexagons, and along here. So I need to remove that from here somehow. We can't cut because it's an array of objects. We want to keep these objects together. We can't use half an object in there. So let's come into the array and utilize the expand array again. Set that to true. We've expanded this out into separate sections, so you can see them all here. And these can be hidden. If I click on one and press the spacebar, it hides it. Or if I just select the section I want, then we can export that out. I'm going to come up, use edit and box selection, and box selection say these, and press the spacebar. That hides them. Or we can use the edit box selection, make sure our top is aligned correctly, and we'll just rotate this around. Let's just escape that. So escape the box selection, and that brings that back around. The box selection for some reason was holding on to the viewpoint. So now we've got the viewpoint around here, and we'll use the box selection again. It's worth remembering the selection for this. So box selection is Shift B. So if I use Shift and B, I can take a box selection within here, like so. Select those. And then when we look on the left hand side here, we can see which ones have been selected. Now, because those have been selected, what we can do, press the spacebar to hide them, and we'll use the reverse. So now we select all of these and press the spacebar again. That toggles the selection, so it changes what's been made visible to invisible and invisible to visible. So we've got those there. This selection was the one that we did before, so we may want to box select that. Let's bring back the sketch if we can find it. There it is there. So we may need to box select that and just get rid of that. Press the spacebar. I'm going to go for that. I know these are outside of this, but we're going to go for that for the time being. So that's my array ready. How do we swap this for our current element? So our NASA fabric, this one here, because we've got the subshape binder in there at the moment, I'm just going to save that. I need to replace it for that object. If we look back at the binder, make it visible, it's sitting here. The array, its base is the binder here. This can be changed. So if I click on that, that can be changed. That's cancelled out of that. So I'm going to come into the NASA fabric and select that body. I'm going to come back, making sure I don't select anything, and use the link. So this item here is make link, and we've got make sublink as well. So select make a link. The body has been pulled in, and you can see that sitting there. Let's take the array. The base is the binder. Let's change the base now to what's been linked. So let's come down. The body's there. Let's hit clear. Click on the body and hit OK. We've now replaced that binder with all of those elements, and we can see them all in there. And they're all connected together. And basically we're ready to go with that. So we built our array. We need to export this out for 3D print. To do so, we use the array on the left hand side here. We first need to convert this to a mesh. Let's come over to the mesh design workbench, and we've got tools in here to convert shapes to mesh, and it's this one here. Create mesh from shape, all available from meshes and down to create mesh from shape. First of all, make sure the array is selected, and then use the tool, and we'll get some options on the left hand side for the tessellation. Let's just go for the standard and hit OK. FreeCAD will convert that array to a mesh. So look now, we've got this array meshed. Let's hide all the other objects by pressing the spacebar and the body. And now we've got this mesh here. This can be exported out. So to do that, make sure it's selected and go up to the File and Export. And we can select the STL from here. Save and hit yes. We now got the array as an STL file ready for 3D printing. For a lot more flexibility, let's use the Lattice 2 workbench. So I've got the Lattice 2 workbench already installed. It's an external workbench that has to be added via the Tools and Add-on Manager. This is the Lattice 2 workbench, and what it allows us to do is say create a sketch as the backbone for our arraying. So I'm going to create a sketch in here. First I'm going to create a new document, and we're going to save this as Lattice Assembly. And I'm going to go to File and open the recent file of the NASA fabric. I'm going to click on the body. I'm going to import that. I'm going to import that into our assembly. Unfortunately, our file has disappeared, so let's bring that back in. So we've got those two there. Make sure the body is selected. Come over to the other tab and use the link. Now, if I create a new sketch along the XY plane, I can create some kind of backbone in here. Let's say a single line, like so, and hit close. I can come over to the Lattice 2 workbench and select that line. Come up to Lattice 2, and I'm going to use a linear array of the very first one, linear array span /n. We can change that, and we will change that. Now I've got the linear array. What we can do is take the body, control click the linear array, come up to Lattice 2, and come down to populate with copies. Populate with copies. It places a copy of this object on each of those points. If we come into the new icon in the tree view and expand this out, we'll see a linear array in here. Now this is where we change the span n. So let's come down and find the generator, which is span n, and change this to step n. This allows me to define a step. So before we wouldn't be able to do that if we use the span n. And if I hit 10 here, you'll notice that when I click off, these move. So I can get these just by using the step and refreshing the screen in the correct position. So I'm going to go for something like 12.5 and click off. So I've got those connected now. Let's hide this one by clicking on it and pressing the spacebar. And now we can take the linear array and come down and look for the count and increase this count to how many we want. So going across there. What this allows me to do is create multiple lines in some type of shape and set those out with the linear array and this method to create the shape that we want. Let's try that. So what I've done is deleted everything except for the linked body. And we're going to come over to the sketcher. I'm going to rough out the shape that I want. So I'm going to create a new sketch along the XY plane and hit OK. Now here, let's come over to the model and just hide this body by clicking on it and pressing the space bar. Let's come back to the task tab and create the shape that we want in here. So I'm going to go for a simple shape just for this demonstration, and we say we're going to have a shape something like this. So this sort of shape, and connect back up. Now what we can do is use lines and connect up a number of lines going across here. And we can set these some distance away, and this will be the flow of those links along these lines. So something like this. Obviously we need some distance across here to figure out how they're going to link together. Let's close and come back to the Lattice 2 workbench. So we have our sketch. Let's select one of the lines, the top one, and use the linear array. I'm selecting it from the toolbar. Click on it, the linear array gets added. And we can do the same for all the rest. So we're adding linear arrays as we go down. You see this one's going the wrong way. Let's click on the linear array. Let's come down to the data tab and look up and find reverse and set this to true. Then we'll click off. They're now flowing the same way. Because our model was symmetrical, then this won't really matter. And we've got the same for these, and we can change these as well. I'm just going to add them and highlight the ones that are around the wrong way. Come down to the data tab and look for the reverse and set that to true. I'll set all those to reverse. Let's show the body. Control click the linear array, the first one. Lattice 2, populate with copies, populate with copies. That's added them in there. Let's do the same with this one. But the body has gone inside this populate linear array with body. We have to select it from in here. Control click the next linear array, which is this one. And do the same. Lattice 2, populate with copies, populate with copies. We can click on the body and control click multiple arrays and do the same. Lattice 2, populate with copies, populate with copies. And that adds them all to those and creates separate objects. I'm just going to Control Z that and just work with these two. Now I've got these two, we can adjust the sketch. Let's come back to the model and show those arrays. And we'll move these up and press Ctrl R or the refresh on your keyboard. Once they're in the right position, or more or less in the right position, we can then work on the arraying. I can see that we've got a distance here that's not equal to the distance on the left hand side. Let's come out to sketch, view section, to section through there, and we'll set some distance between these two. With a distance between this point and this point of 13 millimeters. Let's do the same on this side of 13 mil. Use a refresh edit, refresh, and our linear array has altered position. Come back to task and hit close. Now we can deal with the arraying. We need to step these as well, so we need to offset this forward. We'll do that in a minute. Let's click on one of these, populate linear array with body, and come into the linear array. Let's come down and change it to generator and step n. Now we can alter the steps. So zoom out and reduce this down. So they connect up. And I'm going to come around to the other side because we can see what we're doing better around this other side. So that looks good. And we can add the number of counts along here. So let's increase the count. So we've adjusted the step so these are closer. And that's come down to count, which is just here. And we can increase this, let's say about 8. So count of 8 across here. Let's do the same with this one. So this is going to be the same. So we've got to take basically the same parameters. So it's step 13. So this one here, open that up, click on linear array, count 13, come down, change the generator to step n. And looks like I've made a mistake there. So let's check this linear array. So count is 8, step is 13. So let's change that. So count is 8, step is 13. So we've got those in there. And they're stepped quite nicely. But let's say if these were on a straight. So we've got those there. And well, we can see that actually they're intersecting. So we need to make some adjustments. But we've gone right across this line. We need to offset this to the right. So that's come into that linear array and come down to the offset. So we've got offset here. Let's offset this by 1. This will offset the whole lot by 1 step. Let's try 0.5 and we can adjust this back 0.25, 0.2. So it's looking almost right there. Let's do some minor adjustment up on the sketch and change this length to 12.5. And the same on this side, 12.5. Close that. And we have our connections going across there. They're all connecting quite well. Maybe we can pull this closer together on the sketch and change both of these to 12. And close that. We've got a much better connection there. And it's basically a case of repeating this across the shape. So we can repeat this all the way across this shape using the same techniques as we did with these 2 lines. So that's how to use the Lattice workbench to create the shape. As you can see, we can set up multiple lines in there and multiple linear arrays. What we're going to do now is 3D print one of those arrays and have a look to see what it looks like when it comes out on the printer. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via PayPal. at paypal.com/paypalme/Darren B. Eastone, or at Coffee via ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/Mango Jelly Solutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I thank everybody that's donated so far. It really helps to keep the lights on so I can produce more content and also expand the channel. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing to these videos, and I hope to see you again in the next one.